Gloria laus et honor tibi sit, Rex Christe Redemptor.
Yesterday morning, I pulled out a quite old book I have of the letters written by Padre Pio, Saint Padre Pio, to his spiritual director. I mean, they are chock full of spiritual knowledge and perception, and also, by the way, the words of Jesus and Mary. I wasn't all that conscious of the fact that Jesus spoke all the time to Saint Padre Pio, and the Blessed Virgin Mary even called him on the carpet in one of the readings that I will read to you. So I'm just going to read some letters written by Saint Padre Pio to his spiritual director. So this is from the 13th of February, 1913. My dear Father, I am very happy just now. Jesus never stops loving me, in spite of all my shortcomings, for he allows those ugly-faced creatures to afflict me incessantly. For the past 22 days, Jesus has allowed them to vent their anger on me continually. My body, dear Father, is bruised all over from all the blows it has received at the hands of our enemies. I think many of us are aware that Padre Pio used to get physically beaten up by demons night after night after night, and that's what he's recounting here. Back to the letter. More than once they even went so far as to pull off my nightshirt and beat me in that state. Tell me now, was it not Jesus who helped me in those awful moments when I was bereft of all other assistance, and the devils tried to destroy me body and soul? Add to this that even when they withdrew, I remained stripped for quite a long time, as I was powerless to move, and this in the present severely cold season. How much harm would they not have done me, if our most tender Jesus had not come to my assistance? I do not know what will happen to me. I only know one thing for certain, that the Lord will never fall short of his promises. Quote, do not fear, I will make you suffer, but I will also give you the strength to suffer. Jesus tells me continually, quote, I want your soul to be purified and tried by a daily hidden martyrdom. Do not be frightened if I allow the devil to torment you, the world to disgust you, and your nearest and dearest to afflict you. For nothing will prevail against those who groan beneath the cross for love of me, and whom I have taken care to protect. How many times, said Jesus to me a little while ago, would you not have abandoned me if I had not crucified you? Beneath the cross one learns to love, and I do not grant this to everyone, but only to those souls who are dearest to me. End of quote of Jesus speaking to Saint Padre Pio. Back to Padre Pio's words, and thank you for all the prayers you offer the Lord for me. I promise when I come to him to plead your cause. Jesus is good, and he cannot resist my cries, even though they are invariably feeble. Pray for the one who cares a great deal for you. I mean, how much do we learn from that about our daily crosses, about the meaning of suffering, about Jesus not only both sending us the suffering and also being present with us in the suffering and giving us strength to suffer the suffering. Do not be frightened if I allow the devil to torment you, the world to disgust you, and your nearest and dearest to afflict you. For nothing will prevail against those who groan beneath the cross for love of me, and whom I have taken care to protect. Moving on to about a month later. My dear Father, my health has been very bad. I will also always thank God for it, since what has been by his will. Listen, my dear Father, to the justified complaints of our most sweet Jesus. So this is now Jesus speaking. With what ingratitude is my love for men repaid? I should be less offended by them if I had loved them less. My Father does not want to bear with them any longer. I myself want to stop loving them, but, And here Jesus paused, sighed, and then continued, but alas, my heart is made to love. Weak and cowardly men make no effort to overcome temptation, and indeed they take delight in their wickedness. The souls for whom I have a special predilection fail me when put to the test. The weak give way to discouragement and despair, while the strong are relaxing by degrees. They leave me alone by night, alone by day in the churches. They no longer care about the sacrament of the altar. Hardly anyone ever speaks of this sacrament of love, and even those who do speak, alas, with great indifference and coldness. My heart is forgotten. Nobody thinks any more of my love, and I am continually grieved. For many people, my house has become an amusement center. Even my ministers, whom I have loved as the apple of my eye, who ought to console my heart brimming over with sorrow, who ought to assist me in the redemption of souls, who would believe it? Even by my ministers I must be treated with ingratitude and slighted. I behold my son. Here he remained silent, sobs contracted his throat, and he wept secretly. I behold my son many people who act hypocritically and betray me by sacrilegious communions, trampling underfoot the light and strength which I give them continually. End of the direct quote, back to St. Padre Pio's words. Jesus continues to complain. Dear Father, how bad I feel when I see Jesus weeping. Have you experienced this also? Back to Jesus. My son, I need victims to calm my Father's just divine anger. Renew the sacrifice of your whole self, and do so without any reserve. Back to Padre Pio. I have renewed the sacrifice of my life, dear Father, and if I experience some feeling of sadness, it is in the contemplation of the God of sorrows. If you can, try to find souls who will offer themselves to the Lord as victims for sinners. Jesus will help you. By divine permission, the ogre continues to wage war on me, but God is with me. End of the letter from Padre Pio. Moving on to the next month, the 7th of April, 1913. My very dear Father, on Friday morning, while I was still in bed, Jesus appeared to me. He was in a sorry state and quite disfigured. He showed me a great multitude of priests, regular and secular, among whom were several high ecclesiastical dignitaries. Some were celebrating Mass, while others were vesting or taking off the sacred vestments. The sight of Jesus in distress was very painful to me, so I asked him why he was suffering so much. There was no reply, but his gaze turned on those priests. Shortly afterwards, as if terrified and weary of looking at them, he withdrew his gaze. Then he raised his eyes and looked at me, and to my great horror, I observed 2 tears coursing down his cheeks. He drew back from that crowd of priests with an expression of great disgust on his face and cried out, "Butchers!" Then turning to me, he said, "My son, do not think that my agony lasted 3 hours. No, on account of the souls who have received most from me, I shall be in agony until the end of the world. During my agony, my son, nobody should sleep. My soul goes in search of a drop of human compassion, but alas, I am left alone beneath the weight of indifference. The ingratitude and the sleep of my ministers makes my agony all the more grievous. Alas, how little they correspond to my love. What afflicts me most is that they add contempt and unbelief to their indifference. Many times have I been on the point of annihilating them, had I not been held back by the angels and by souls who are filled with love for me. Write to your spiritual father and tell him what you have seen and heard from me this morning. Tell him to show your letter to Father Provincial. Jesus continued to speak, but what he said I could never reveal to any creature in this world. This apparition caused me such bodily pain and even greater pain of soul, that I was prostrate for the entire day, and I believed I should die of this suffering, had our most sweet Jesus not revealed to me, ... One shudders to think of the state of the world today, with the difficulties that there are in the priesthood and in religious orders, and to imagine Jesus' suffering as a result, when this was his suffering as a result of lapses of holy orders in the priesthood 100 years ago. This is almost exactly, it's actually 110 years ago. So here is a letter from about a month later, the 6th of May, 1913. My dear Father, here we are at last in the month of our beautiful mother once again. If my wretched condition allowed me, how many fine things I should like to tell you, so that you might understand something of my habitual state. I'll make an effort as far as I am allowed. This dear mother continues to lavish her maternal care upon me, especially during the present month. She takes care of me to an exceeding degree. However, when I mention to her that grace of which you are already aware, her heavenly countenance contracts, she becomes sad, and then solemnly renews her prohibition. Now let me backfill a little bit. Padre Pio's spiritual director, Father Agostino, continually asked Padre Pio to make a request of the Blessed Virgin Mary continually, every time he spoke to her. Every time Padre Agostino wrote Padre Pio, he repeated his request to Padre Pio that he make the request of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and Padre Pio, out of obedience, did every single time. And it appears that around this point, the Blessed Virgin Mary got kind of fed up with the continued request. As Padre Pio said, however, whenever I mentioned to her that grace of which you're already aware, her heavenly countenance contracts, she becomes sad, and then solemnly renews her prohibition. And we'll hear more about that request later. What have I done to deserve such delicacy? Has not my behavior been a constant denial? I do not say of the very name of Christian. Yet this most tender mother, in her great mercy, wisdom, and goodness, has been pleased to punish me in a most exalted manner by pouring so many and such great graces into my heart, that when I am in her presence and in that of Jesus, I am compelled to exclaim, where am I? Where do I find myself? Who is this who is near me? I am all aflame, although there is no fire. I feel myself held fast and bound to the sun by means of this mother, without seeing the chains which bind me so tightly. 1,000 flames consume me. I feel I am constantly dying, yet I am still alive. At certain moments, the fire which devours me within is so intense that I make every effort to draw away from them, to go in search of water, icy water, in which to plunge. But alas, my dear Father, I realize at once how unhappy I am, because I feel then more than ever that I am not free. I feel the invisible chains binding me tightly to Jesus and his beloved mother, and it is at these moments, more often than not, that I flare up. I feel the blood coursing to my heart and then to my head, and I am tempted to cry out to them to call the son cruel and the mother a tyrant. But, dear God, I am no longer master of myself, and I am aware that this is madness. Then, when I succeed in controlling myself, and reflect on my life, which is certainly not an enviable one, I have the strength to protest that I would not exchange it at any price for many other lives in this world. I'd like to fly off to invite all creatures to love Jesus and Mary. Here you have a feeble description of what happens to me when I am with Jesus and Mary. Apart from these moments, I try to avoid all pleasures, and yet an immense gladness fills my whole heart and makes me blissful and content. I suffer, and I want to suffer more and more. I feel I am being consumed, and I want to be consumed more and more. I long for death for no other reason than to be united by indissoluble bonds to the heavenly bridegroom. Yet I desire to live, so as to suffer more and more, since Jesus has given me to understand that the sure proof of love is only to be found in suffering. I seem to be searching continually for something I cannot find, and I even myself do not know what I seek. I love and suffer very little, and I wish I could love much more this thing I am seeking. I would like to suffer much more for the ideal I am pursuing. But, my dear Father, although I do not know what this good is that my heart of its own accord seeks so avidly, I seem to know one thing for certain, that this good is inexhaustible and not circumscribed by limits. I seem to understand, moreover, that my heart will never be able to contain it entirely, for in my ignorance I feel that this is a very great good, an immense good, an infinite good. Is this Jesus? If not, then who is it? Padre Pio. Now, before the musical break, you may remember that there was a particular favor that Padre Agostino kept nagging Padre Pio to ask the Blessed Virgin Mary the next time he spoke to her, and each time Padre Pio would ask her under obedience. And the last time he asked her, she got grave and looked quite severe and annoyed with him for asking. And now we will go to the next chapter in that history about a month later. Actually, just 2 weeks later. There's now the 18th of May, 1913. My dear Father, may the grace of Jesus Christ be with you always. You will pardon me for having kept you waiting so long for this letter, and you will already have guessed the reason for the delay. When I received your last, I wanted to remind Our Lady of the grace for which you told me to ask continually, in the hope that I would succeed this time by another means, that is, through obedience. Unfortunately, I have to tell you, to my embarrassment, that the desired result was not achieved, because this Holy Mother became quite angry with me for daring to ask again for this grace, which she had already sternly refused me. She made me pay only too dearly for this involuntary disobedience on my part. From that day, she withdrew from me, along with the other heavenly persons. Now, my dear Father, who could tell you all I have had to bear? I have been alone by night and alone by day. From that day, I became involved in a bitter strife with those ugly wretches. They tried to make me believe that I had been rejected by God forever. And who would not have believed this, in view of the far from courteous manner in which I had been separated from Jesus and Mary? But I give thanks to Jesus, for although he took everything from me when he withdrew from me, he did not deprive me of my hope in him. I felt this so strongly within me that I too would exclaim, "Even if you were to slay me, Lord, I would hope in you." Job 13:15. Even if you were to slay me, Lord, I would hope in you. However, this hope in Jesus on my part increased more and more the anger of Satan's militia against me. Woe is me! With tears and sighs and groans I invoked help from heaven, but it seemed to me that heaven had turned to stone. I felt a great sense of rebellion within me and thought I'd go mad. Things continued like this every day at all hours until this morning, when I felt all my physical and moral strength leaving me. My heart was plunged in immeasurable anguish, which should have been poured out in tears. But these eyes of mine, which had shed such an abundance of tears during the previous days, were no longer full of tears but quite dry. This struggle caused me severe suffering. I hardly had the strength to address this appeal to the Comforter of the afflicted. Quote, "Mother of mercy, have pity on me. You must understand, my dear mother, that if I acted thus, it was merely for the sake of obedience. I had hardly sent up this brief prayer to heaven when I felt my heart leap and my head reel. The ice was broken. The Comforter of the afflicted was there, together with her Son, but their stern faces struck terror into my heart. They reprimanded me severely, and then repeated their refusal. quote, "Do not worry if others think strange things about you, for we have begun to defend you. If they have blamed you up to the present, they must answer to us from now on. They have had too many proofs, so leave it to us to punish them if necessary." End of the quote of Jesus. You know, moreover, how indebted I am to those two holy people, and what affection I have for them. You also know that I like to be grateful to my benefactor, so I must tell you that I drew Jesus' attention to the grace which you had recommended to me so strongly. But the reconciliation was too recent. Jesus was still too reserved and stiff with me to give me a precise reply. And then Padre Pio actually goes on to some details about the intended recipient of this special grace. So we see the sternness and the no-nonsenseness of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And we also see the other wonderful thing, which is as soon as Padre Pio cried uncle, so to speak, the moment he cried uncle, remember he said, he cried out, "Mother of mercy, have pity on me." The ice was broken, the comforter of the afflicted was there, together with her son. And I'm going to just add a little personal note before we go on. One of my favorite prayers for a long time was uncle, when I would be going through spiritual dryness, or when I would be going through some interior suffering, or when things just seemed to get more than I could bear. I would simply throw up the prayer uncle. I'm a strong proponent of the prayer uncle, as long as you're not the boy who cried wolf and use it unnecessarily. They seem to respond to the prayer uncle. Okay, so this is now a letter to another one of his spiritual fathers, Father Padre Benedetto. My dear Father, it's from June of 1913. My dear Father, may the grace of Jesus Christ always be with us. How am I going to make myself understood in what I have to tell you? I feel the need to humble myself before the Lord and to ask him, if he will, to guide my hand himself and give me the grace to succeed in telling you something of the great marvels which his mercy reveals to my soul. Dear Father, what a terrible thing is spiritual suffering. Miserable creature that I am, a holy trembling takes hold of me as I start to deal with this subject, and I am embarrassed by my utter failure to find suitable words with which to explain myself. My soul, which is constantly receiving favors from God, is not satisfied, and is continually groaning and longing for its sufferings to be redoubled. As the days pass, I see ever more clearly the greatness of God, and in this light which grows brighter and brighter, my soul burns with the desire to be united to him by indissoluble bonds. By this light, I see how deserving this adorable Lord is of all of our love, and I feel more and more inflamed with love for him. But, dear God, this very desire to be united with him, to love him as much as a creature can, causes in me the keenest suffering, since I see more and more clearly how far I am from the certain possession of him without fear of losing him. All this, however, is still tolerable, and is nothing in comparison to another fire which is blissfully spreading in my soul. It frequently happens that when I am completely recollected, at the slightest thought that death may be delayed in coming to unite me to God, suddenly, I do not know how or where from, I am struck as if by lightning, as if pierced through by a fiery arrow. Alas, the wound I receive is far more penetrating than the effect of lightning on the body. I am aware that it has not been inflicted on that part of my being in which ordinary pains are felt, but in the inmost recesses of my soul. In this state, it is impossible for me to think of anything concerning my own existence. From the very first moment, my faculties become inactive, and I have no freedom whatsoever with regard to the things of this world, except for things that increase and aggravate my torment. The clear and keen awareness which the Lord gives me of his lovableness and his perfections, of his goodness in pardoning those who have deserved nothing but hell, increases my pain to such an intense degree that I almost invariably cry out loudly. Sometimes this state lasts only for a very short time, but when I come to myself, the interior spiritual pain is so intense and so much greater than physical pain that if my body were to be cut in pieces, I should feel nothing of it. This latter state sometimes lasts many days, during which, due to this interior pain, my body itself is affected to such an extent that I haven't the strength to write a line. In the past, my desire to see God used to make me conform to his will, considering myself as I did to be in exile, and conformity helped me to endure this life. But now, dear Father, this is no longer within my power. My reason, oppressed by the pain of seeing myself still in exile, comes to the point where it is no longer its own master, and can only consider the motives it has for tormenting me. I experience such a strange solitude that neither any creature here below, nor those who dwell in heaven, even though my beloved is there, could keep me company. I find no relief in this world where everything wearies and torments me. Yet I want to suffer all this torture for my whole life, if this is pleasing to God, even though I know as well as I know myself that this means agony for the soul. On other occasions, although I am not thinking of such a thing at all, my soul goes on fire with the most keen desire to possess Jesus entirely. Then, with an indescribable vividness communicated to my soul by the Lord, I am shown as in a mirror my whole future as nothing but a martyrdom. Without knowing why and with unspeakable love, I yearn for death. Despite all my efforts, I am driven to ask God with tears in my eyes to let me be taken from this exile. I feel inflamed with such a lively and ardent desire to please God, and I am gripped by such a fear of falling into any slightest imperfection that I would like to flee from all dealings with creatures. Simultaneously, however, another desire rises up like a giant in my heart, the longing to be in the midst of all peoples, to proclaim at the top of my voice who this great God of mercy is. Now and then, apart from these simultaneously painful and delightful feelings, the Lord grants me certain pleasures that even I myself do not understand. The happiness I experience is so extreme that I would like to share it with others, so that they might help me thank the Lord. Again, when I am busy about even indifferent things, a mere word about God or the sudden thought of some such word affects me so deeply that I am carried out of myself. Then the Lord usually grants me the grace of revealing to me some secrets which remain indelibly impressed on my soul. I am unable, however, to describe all these secrets, for more often than not I have no adequate words for the purpose. Even the secrets which I succeed to some extent in putting into words lose so much of their splendor that I regard myself with compassion and disgust. As a result of these favors, which sometimes last for several days, my will remains enraptured and my intellect completely absorbed in what it has beheld. But when I come to myself completely, I am filled with embarrassment, seeing how unworthy I am of such favors. I would like to have an infinite number of lives to spend entirely for God, and it is at this point that I complain loudly to Jesus that he offers me so few occasions to suffer. A holy and learned person whom I consulted about these things has eased my mind and assured me that there is no deception here. My dear Father, what have you yourself to say to reassure me? In the past I felt very embarrassed by these things, but this is no longer the case. And then Padre Pio actually goes on to some personal business with the provincial. Wow. Okay. When you read these letters of Padre Pio, when you read any of the saints, you realize what we are going to literally be dead before we have any idea of what we are made for and what the potential of the human soul is for life with God in eternity. And how foolish it is, how foolish it is, how foolish it is to be trading that for the baubles, the plastic rhinestones of pleasures on earth. We are going to live in all eternity. We are going to live, if we play our cards right, in unimaginable bliss, unimaginable intimacy with God, unimaginable ecstasy even, unimaginable depth of experience of nothing but good. And we have to play our cards right.
Gloria laus et honor tibi sit, Rex Christe.